You think a grizzly bear is scary? Picture a bear twice its size, faster, and built with the proportions of a cheetah. Welcome to the prehistoric world, a world carved by ice and unimaginable silence, a world where you were not at the top of the food chain. This wasn't your playground, this was an arena, and every sunrise was just a fragile promise that you might see the sunset. Forget the comforts of the modern age. Here, the only comfort was the flickering warmth of a dying fire, and the only sound of safety was the soft murmur of your tribe sleeping beside you. This world, the world of the Pleistocene epoch, was a land of titans. Behemoths walked this earth that make today's most dangerous animals look like tame house pets. Our ancestors, small, physically weak, but armed with a terrifyingly new and potent weapon called intelligence, had to face these flesh and blood nightmares every single day. They didn't just survive, they thrived. But to do so, they had to look true monsters in the eye. Today, we're counting down 5 of the absolute deadliest creatures a prehistoric human had to face. 5 reasons why the average life expectancy was terrifyingly short. Kicking off our list at number 5 is an icon of prehistoric brutality, a predator whose very name is synonymous with killing power, the saber-toothed cat, or more accurately, Smilodon. The name conjures an image of 2 colossal curved ivory blades protruding from its upper jaw, and that image is dead-on accurate. These canine teeth could grow up to 11 inches long, were sharp as daggers, and were designed for one single purpose: to deliver a catastrophic wound in a single bite. But don't let the fangs fool you. Smilodon was more than just a walking set of jaws. This was a perfectly engineered killing machine. It wasn't a big cat in the modern sense. Imagine a lion, but a lion on steroids. Smilodon was more robustly built, with a thick, muscular body, especially in the neck and shoulders. It was built not for long-distance chases, but for explosive, close-quarters ambushes. It possessed immensely powerful forelimbs, tipped with retractable claws, used to wrestle prey to the ground in a devastating burst of raw muscular force. Once the prey was pinned, that's when the fangs came into play. Unlike modern lions or tigers that often kill by suffocation, Smilodon employed a far more gruesome technique. It would use its powerful neck to drive those saber teeth deep into the soft tissue of its prey, often the throat or the belly, severing major arteries and causing a near-instant death from massive blood loss. For a prehistoric human, the threat of a Smilodon wasn't a chase across the open plains. The threat came from the silence. It was a master of camouflage. Its spotted coat blended perfectly into the tall grasses and sparse woodlands. You could be walking through a valley, spear in hand, your mind focused on tracking deer, and you would never, ever know it was there until it was far too late. The attack would come from nowhere, a blur of brown and gold, a guttural roar tearing through the air, and the crushing weight of 400 pounds of pure muscle slamming into you. Even in a group, Smilodon was a lethal threat. It was powerful enough to take down prehistoric bison and horses, so a few small humans would not have been an overwhelming challenge. Your only weapons were awareness, fire, and the strength of your numbers. Spotting it before it spotted you was the difference between life and death, and if you failed, the end would be swift and horrifically violent. But as terrifying as the Smilodon was, it was still a creature of stealth. There were other things out there, things that were bigger, faster, and arguably even meaner. That brings us to our number 4 entry, a creature that redefines the very concept of an apex land predator. Forget grizzly bears or polar bears. They are pale shadows of this behemoth. We're talking about Arctodus simus, the short-faced bear. This bear was a true monster. Standing on all fours, its shoulders were nearly 6 feet high, meaning it could look a fully grown man directly in the eye. And when it reared up on its hind legs, it could tower up to 12 feet tall, high enough to peer into a second-story window today. It could weigh up to 2,000 pounds, nearly double the weight of the largest Kodiak bear. But its sheer size wasn't the most terrifying thing about it. What was truly horrifying was its build. Unlike its modern cousins, the short-faced bear had unusually long, slender legs. It was built to run. Scientists estimate it could reach speeds of up to 40 miles per hour, making it faster than a racehorse. Now, just imagine that for a moment. a 1-ton beast capable of outrunning the fastest Olympic sprinter charging towards you. There would be nowhere to run, no tree tall enough to climb. Its face, as its name implies, was short and broad, giving it an incredible bite force, strong enough to crush bone with ease. And its sense of smell was thought to be one of the most acute of any mammal ever, capable of detecting a carcass from miles away. This has led to a debate among paleontologists. Was it an active predator or a giant scavenger? The answer is likely both, and that makes it even more dangerous. As a scavenger, it would have had no hesitation in driving other predators, like a pack of deer wolves or even a smilodon, off their kill. It was the ultimate bully of the Ice Age. If it wanted your meal, it was going to take it. And as a predator, it was fast enough and powerful enough to run down and kill large prey like horses, camels, and even young bison. For a prehistoric human, the short-faced bear represented absolute dominance. It didn't need to hide. It walked the land like it owned it, because, for all intents and purposes, it did. An encounter with one would likely begin with you spotting a colossal shape in the distance, loping across the steppe with an impossibly long stride. Initial curiosity would quickly curdle into sheer terror as it turned its head in your direction and you realized it had caught your scent. From that moment, you were on the clock. Your only strategy would be to hope for a cliff face to hide under, a fissure in the earth deep enough that it couldn't reach you. Your spear would be nothing more than a toothpick against it. The strength of your tribe would be tested to its absolute limit. To face a creature like this would require unimaginable bravery and likely a great deal of desperation. Even bringing one down would be a Pyrrhic victory, one that almost certainly would have cost the lives of many. The short-faced bear was not just an animal. It was a force of nature, a constant, terrifying reminder to our ancestors of their fragile place in this wild world. But not all threats came from carnivores. Sometimes, the most dangerous creatures are the ones you least expect. And that brings us to number 3 on our list, a creature whose placid appearance concealed a terrifying potential for violence.
We arrive at number 3, and it's a creature whose name might make you think there's been a mistake. You think of sloths, the slow, gentle, tree-dwelling creatures of the rainforests. Now take that image, multiply its size by 1,000, put it on the ground, and give it claws that could rip through the side of a car. Welcome to the world of the megatherium, the giant ground sloth. Megatherium was one of the largest land mammals of the Ice Age, a true behemoth. It was the size of a modern elephant, standing up to 20 feet tall on its hind legs and weighing over 4 tons. And unlike an elephant, it had a fearsome set of defensive weapons. Each of its forelimbs was equipped with enormous, curved claws, some reaching nearly 2 feet in length. These claws weren't for hunting. Megatherium was an herbivore. They were used for pulling down massive tree branches to feed on the leaves, or for digging up roots. But they also served as an unbelievably effective defense system. Imagine a 4-ton beast rearing up on its hind legs like a tower and swinging powerful arms tipped with bone daggers. Any predator, even a smilodon, would have to think twice before attacking such a creature. So why was this giant plant-eating beast a deadly threat to prehistoric humans? The answer lies in temptation. For a tribe struggling to survive, a single megatherium represented a walking treasure chest. 4 tons of meat, hide, and bone, enough to feed an entire community for weeks, to provide hides for clothing and shelter, and bone for tools and weapons. The hunt for a megatherium was a high-risk, high-reward gamble of the highest order. It was an event that would be retold around the fire for generations. But hunting it was a near-suicidal task. It was covered in a thick, tough hide, which was embedded with small pieces of bone called osteoderms, acting as a kind of natural chainmail. Normal wooden spears would have had little chance of penetrating this defense. The only way to bring it down was to get close, to aim for weak spots like the underbelly or the neck. And getting close meant you were in range of those claws. A single swipe from a megatherium could disembowel a hunter or snap bones with ease. It may not have been fast, but it had absolute crushing power. Prehistoric hunters would have had to use incredibly sophisticated strategies. Perhaps they tried to herd it into a massive pit trap, or corner it in a swamp where it would become bogged down. Maybe they used fire to panic it and disorient it. But no matter the strategy, it required flawless coordination and incredible courage. One mistake, one hunter tripping, one moment of hesitation, and a hunt for food could turn into a massacre. The danger of the megatherium wasn't in its innate aggression, but in its absolute defensive power when cornered. It was a harsh lesson of the Ice Age. Even the herbivores could be killers. But while a giant ground sloth was a formidable solitary opponent, there was another threat that operated in an entirely different way, a threat that multiplied its power through numbers. This brings us to our number 2 spot, a familiar name, but on a much more terrifying scale. The direwolf, or Canis dirus. Direwolves were not just slightly bigger gray wolves. They were more heavily built, more robust, with a larger skull and a much more powerful bite. They were wolves engineered to take down the massive megafauna of the Ice Age. But their true weapon, their true danger to humans, wasn't the size or power of any single individual. It was the pack. Modern gray wolves are already formidable pack hunters, but dire wolves took that coordination to a new level. The La Brea tar pits in California have given us an incredible window into their world, with thousands of dire wolf skeletons recovered, far more than any other mammal. This suggests they lived in enormous packs, perhaps 30 individuals or more. Now, imagine you are a prehistoric hunter, tracking a lone deer. You're focused on your prey, and you fail to notice the eyes watching you from the shadows of the forest. The first howl erupts not in front of you, but to your left. Before you can react, another answers from your right, then another from behind you. You're surrounded. The cold dread washes over you as you realize you are no longer the hunter. You have become the hunted. The direwolf pack wouldn't attack immediately. They were intelligent. They would test you, circle you, probe for weakness. They would dart in and out of the trees, dark shapes moving with a horrifying purpose. The tension, the fear, would wear you down. And then they would strike. Not from one direction, but from all directions at once. It would be a whirlwind of teeth and claws. Even a group of humans would be in trouble. A direwolf pack could easily drive off a short-faced bear on its kill. They were masters of psychological warfare and coordinated tactics. For prehistoric people, a direwolf pack was one of the most persistent threats. They were everywhere, from dense forests to open plains. They hunted day and night. The danger never truly went away. Fire was your best friend against them. That circle of light and warmth was your only fortress in the deep, dark night. Stepping outside that circle for more firewood was an act of supreme bravery. They represented that primal fear of being hunted, of being overwhelmed by numbers, of being torn apart by a relentless and merciless enemy. They were the reminder that in this world, to be alone was to be dead. We've journeyed past ambush assassins, brutish giants, armored herbivores, and relentless packs. But there is still one creature that stands above them all. The number 1 spot is not held by the fastest or most aggressive predator. In fact, it's an herbivore. But it was the most powerful, the most majestic, and arguably the most dangerous creature our ancestors ever had to face. A creature whose very hunt was an act that shaped human history.
And now, the single deadliest creature a prehistoric human had to face, the one that claims the number 1 spot on our list, is the woolly mammoth, Mammuthus primigenius. You might be thinking, an elephant? A gentle herbivore? How could that possibly be more dangerous than a saber-toothed cat or a pack of dire wolves? The answer lies in 3 things: sheer scale, intelligence, and the power of family. First, let's talk about scale. A full-grown male mammoth was a walking mountain of bone, muscle, and fur. It could stand over 11 feet tall at the shoulder and weigh over 6 tons. It was covered in a thick, long coat of hair, an insulating layer of fat, and an incredibly tough hide. It was, in essence, a biological tank designed to withstand the most brutal cold of the Ice Age. And then there were the tusks. These enormous, spiraling tusks could grow up to 13 feet long, used for defense, for fighting other males, and for sweeping away snow to find vegetation. A single swing of a mammoth's head could send a smilodon flying through the air or crush a hunter into pulp. The danger from a mammoth didn't come from predatory instinct. It came from self-defense, from anger, or from its mere presence. A panicked mammoth could cause a terrifying stampede, trampling everything in its path. A lone bull in must, a state of heightened hormonal aggression, was incredibly aggressive and unpredictable, and would charge anything it perceived as a threat. But the greatest danger came from the females and their social structure. Mammoths, like modern elephants, lived in tight-knit, matriarchal herds, led by an experienced female elder. They were incredibly intelligent and fiercely protective of their young. To hunt a mammoth, you weren't just facing one 6-ton beast. You were facing an entire family of 6-ton beasts, all willing to die to protect each other. So why on earth would humans hunt them? Because, like the megatherium, the rewards were unbelievable. A single mammoth could provide a colossal amount of meat, fat for fueling lamps, bone and ivory for building structures and carving intricate works of art, and hides for warm clothing. A successful mammoth kill could ensure a tribe's survival through a harsh winter. The mammoth hunt was the absolute pinnacle of prehistoric strategy, courage, and cooperation. It was not a head-on confrontation. That would be madness. Instead, it was a multi-day campaign. The hunters would track the herd, studying their habits, waiting for the perfect moment. Perhaps they would try to separate a young or old individual from the herd. They would use the terrain to their advantage, herding the animal into a narrow canyon or towards a cliff edge. They invented a genius weapon called the otlot, a spear thrower that dramatically increased the range and penetrating power of their spears. They would strike from a distance, peppering the animal with dozens of spears, not to kill it instantly, but to wound it, to make it bleed, to wear it down. The hunt would then become a long pursuit, following the wounded beast for days, waiting for it to collapse from blood loss and exhaustion. Every step of this process was fraught with peril. A wounded, cornered mammoth was one of the most frightening things on the planet. It could turn and charge at any moment. The entire process was the ultimate test of endurance and teamwork. The mammoth is number one, not just because it was dangerous, but because the relationship between it and humanity is one of the great stories of prehistory. It was both our most feared enemy and our greatest resource. The hunt for it drove innovation in technology, strategy, and social structure. It forced us to become smarter, more coordinated, and more courageous. Smilodon, the short-faced bear, Megatherium, the dire wolf, and the woolly mammoth. 5 titans of a lost world. They ruled a land that was harsh and unforgiving. So how did our small ancestors, with no claws, no fangs, no speed, manage to survive and eventually come to dominate this planet? The answer wasn't in our muscles, but in our minds. We had the capacity for planning. We could communicate complex ideas. We learned to make tools, not just from stone, but from the very bones of the beasts that hunted us. And most importantly, we learned to work together. A single human was easy prey, but a tribe, united by a common goal, armed with spears and fire, and guided by collective intelligence, was a force to be reckoned with. We didn't survive by being the strongest or the fastest. We survived by being the smartest and most cooperative creature on the planet. We faced the nightmares, and we won. The legacy of that struggle is still in our blood today. Which of these 5 creatures do you fear the most? Which one would make you freeze in terror if you met it in the wild? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for joining us on this journey back to a wilder, more dangerous world. If you enjoy exploring the stories that shaped us, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure into the past. Until next time, stay curious.